Welcome back to the Dallas Prospect. I am DDP coming to you live today, or rather pre-taped today, from our new True Classic studio in Southlake, Texas. Now you may notice I am not yet joined by my co-host Isaiah. That'll begin starting next week. But we're set up here and I wanted to dive into some of the most recent Mavs happenings. Now obviously things aren't good. You're 2-6, you have the worst rated offense in the NBA. Anytime you're gonna be 30th out of 30, that's not good. Conversely, the one thing we were told about the Mavericks that would make the Luka Doncic trade worth it would be, hey, the defensive upgrades. You're going to be an elite defensive team. They're aiming for top 3. Well, guess what? They're top 6 right now in the NBA. Yet, you're 2-6. You've also had I don't know about the easiest schedule in the NBA thus far, but you've had a damn easy schedule. And you find a way to lose to the Pelicans without Zion, who were just recently 0-6 themselves. You find a way to struggle against teams that aren't doing anything, and your own offensive rating, your points per 100 possessions, 6 times this season already, 6 out of 8 games, you have failed to meet the mark of 101. That's bad. It's been done 17 times in the NBA this year. You are 6 of them. Not good. Not good. And you know what? Some of those games you did win were only because your opponent in that contest, the Pacers in their current state right now, very shorthanded, and I believe it was the Raptors, I want to say, also hit that mark. And both of them have done that twice, I think. So, yeah, in that alone, you're accounting for 10 out of the 17 instances. So, as great as you are defensively, and great is a strong word, but as good as you are defensively, you have been that bad offensively that it doesn't even matter. But let's talk a little bit about the offense, right? Let's see what hasn't been so good about it. Obviously, after you have the trade that I've already referenced here last February, and you have the injury to Kyrie Irving, you know you're going to be short-handed with respect to pick and roll and isolation plays. We figured that. The offense would have to morph in the absence of Luka and Kyrie. So how are you going to move forward? Presumably, you're going to move forward by working more dribble handoffs, a little bit more motion, trying to post up AD in the low post, and you're going to try and get Cooper Flagg involved. Well, the Mavericks didn't really seem to have a game plan, because even as they're referencing after this 2-point loss against the Pelicans, yeah, the offense was starting to kind of sort of feel like there was some organization now, as opposed to just the discombobulated mess that we've seen so far. But the Mavericks didn't put themselves in position to succeed because D'Angelo Russell has already had to supplant Klay Thompson in the starting lineup. Klay has been benched. That's one of your big problems right there with your offense. Your high-dollar premier three-point shooter is shooting sub 30% for the year. You've also not done a good job putting yourself in position with playmakers and true point guards in that sense. So you don't have anybody capable of really running the offense, although, hey, that one game you just referenced against the Pelicans, you got to see a little bit of point guard play, so maybe that changed it up a little bit. You're also trying to now counteract it and say, hey, Cooper Flagg, you're going to be our point guard, our point forward, presumably, in this. Well, he's an 18-year-old rookie, and, you know, while we may remember it differently, it is true, Luka Doncic was not just an instantaneous phenom. It took a little bit of time to build up. Now, by the midpoint of his rookie year, we were already like, who is this kid? He's already better than we thought he was going to be. But it's still a bad position to be putting him in. Now, I know Kidd did the same thing with Giannis when he was a rookie in Milwaukee, but I have mixed feelings on it because you're putting yourself in a position with a radically transformed offense and identity, and you're kind of throwing this kid straight away into the flames with high expectations when he's already going to have to shoulder, whether he likes it or not, the burden of the Luka Doncic trade his entire career. Because no matter what happens for his tenure, even beyond Dallas, it'll always boil down to he was the guy that tried to gloss over, not that it was his call, but he was the guy that was brought in to try and gloss over the disaster of the Luka Doncic trade. Their careers will always be tied together. Similar, although I would argue now nobody really talks about it so much, to the way that Trae Young and Luka Doncic were tethered at the hip because of that draft day trade. Luka ascended to new heights, Trae kind of fell off, so that conversation doesn't really happen outside of maybe Atlanta itself at this point. But even still, you've been disjointed. Your turnovers are up. Not to a crazy extent. You're just over average in the league. Like I want to say it's somewhere between 18 and 20th in the league in terms of turnover percentage, turnovers per game, things like that. So not great, but not horrifically bad. The problem is the looks you're creating, because while the Mavericks play with the 5th rated pace in the NBA, their field goal attempts per game is bottom of the barrel, like 29th, I want to say. Some of these stats, not as top of mind. I'm a little out of practice, but their actual shot attempts per game are really, really low, despite being one of the fastest paced teams in the NBA. Make it make sense. How does that happen? Unless you're just turning the ball over like crazy, how are you in those positions? The answer is you're not getting quality shots, and you're disjointed, you're turning the ball over, and you're just, in general, not making quality possessions count. So your ball handlers are struggling when they run pick and roll sets. You're playing without true point guard play, at least for the most part. And you got guys who aren't capable of really creating for themselves. PJ Washington, for instance, just Najee Marshall. Like, you got these guys who are not as dynamic in that sense as you would want. And when you can't counteract them with the stellar generational kind of point guard play like we've seen with the previous 1-2 punch, suddenly their limitations are on full display. Now, one thing the Mavericks do quite well is they're shooting threes in the corner. They're in the top 10 on that in terms of attempts per game. But even there, who they're setting those looks up for is less than ideal. They're setting up guys. Anthony Davis, not bad. He just hasn't been able to play a lot because of, hey, guess what? Injuries. His weight looks to be a bit of an issue as well with that. Interesting how that comes full circle. Maybe Texas Barbecue really is just the ultimate villain in this story. But you have this sort of situation where people are low-key starting to talk about, like, there's been some internal trade discussions of, like, if you were to trade Anthony Davis, what would that return market look like? Like, oh, wow, okay, wow. You want to make the Luka trade that much worse? Do that, because the best thing you can hope for right now is that he eventually figures it out and you get to have, at the very least, another return to the finals to vindicate that trade. Otherwise, anything short of that, let alone something this disastrous of just a reactionary, like, oofa, we're done here. Burn it all down. Fire, as we've said forever, fire Nico. Kid's going to feel the brunt of this, even though he didn't agree with the trade. It is what it is. This is just like, we got to tear it all down. Coaching is a problem with this, because the guys that we're setting up for these looks, even when we are generating that corner three that we love, the highest percentage three-point shot you can generate, we're not getting enough of our elite shooters in that. We're not getting Max Christie enough looks. He, by the way, is a rare bright spot for this team right now, because his three-point shooting is up. It was already solid last year. It's up very strong this year, and his defensive presence has been much needed. One of the rare good decisions that you've made right now in terms of prospects you got back. The only thing that looks like a shining light here so far. Because, yeah, you've got just a broken offense that, despite moving fast, doesn't generate good looks. You're taking something like 20% of your shots are poor shots, forced shots, just low percentage shots. That's not good. Obviously, that's up as well. And anytime you got to deal with a shot clock, you're going to encounter those sorts of things. Eventually, you're going to have to try and put the ball up. But the fact that this offense is so disjointed and broken. And then you have not true point guard play. Yes, again, potentially it might further Cooper Flagg's development, but you already got a guy who after the Pelicans game is lamenting, man, I never thought I don't think I've ever lost this much ever in my career at any level. Welcome to the NBA, kid. Like, you were drafted number 1 overall. The way historically that works is it means you're going to go to a team that was really bad and has to undergo major transformation. Now, his camp was apparently very excited when the Mavericks got the number 1 pick because it's like, hey, they're covered with veterans everywhere. They've got guys that know how to win. Obviously, you got a guy like Klay, who was a 4-time NBA champion. Well, Klay looks like a shadow of himself right now. Kyrie's not back, and I don't have any idea of how fast he's going to get back. Your veterans that you do have are also looking disjointed, despite having finals experience, being former All-Stars, etc. And so all of these guys that you're trying to turn to are simply not having the impact, and this team just looks atrocious right now. Bottom of the basement in the Western Conference, again, despite a top 6 defensive rating. So we went all in on defense. Defense, baby, this is what we're going to build this team on. We no longer believe in the ISO heliocentric offense around just Luka and Kyrie bailing us out. Well, your usage you put on Kyrie took care of that part of the equation, and you took care of the Luka part. Now he's off in LA, breaking Jerry West records, averaging 40 a game, and meanwhile, Cooper Flagg and Anthony Davis are combining for like 35.5 points per game. Cool story, bro. Great team building. I'm sure we will move on quickly from this. I'm sincerely trying, but it is very hard every time I still see a photo or video of Luka in a Laker jersey. Doesn't feel real, even still. But this team just is a mess. And I'll admit, I was more optimistic because of the defensive improvements that they made. Like, they're so heavy on bigs, I assumed they would be a better offensive rebounding team. I assumed their defensive versatility was going to make it where, hey, even if the offense was just average, just give me average, we would be a team that would be 6th in the Western Conference maybe. And we're not even getting that. And, I heard Locked On Mavs talking about how, like, well, we kind of think they could be sort of like Houston was last year, when Houston's offensive rebounding percentage, something like 40%, offensive rebounding percentage, just made them demons on that. And the Mavericks are decidedly not that. Decidedly not. Their rebounding percentage is like 20-ish%. Why? Well, one stat you could say was overlooked is the fact that Houston has Steven Adams. Now, you might look at that and say, well, Steven Adams, he's not that relevant. He's a funny, well-liked teammate anywhere he's ever been, and an incredibly chill dude, but what does that have to do with it? It's not like he's averaging 15 rebounds a game. No, but there is a stat that shows you that 9 of the last 10 seasons, whatever team Steven Adams played for, led the NBA in offensive rebound percentage. There is something there. I can't say exactly what it is. Sort of like in the MLB where you got Will Smith, who has been on the last 6 World Series champions. I can't explain what this random utility guy has, but if he's on your team, apparently you're going to win the World Series. If you got Steven Adams on your team in the NBA, you're going to lead the league in offensive rebounding percentage, because Houston, while their length is insane this year, it was not that crazy last year. So there was more to it than just saying, hey, you got a bunch of guys that are like 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", with crazy wingspans like you do now with Kevin Durant. There's more to it than that. Even still, you're not getting those percentages. You're forcing, like 20% of your shots are low percentage shots, forced bad shots. The corner threes you are generating, while you're generating them at a pretty good clip, aren't to your marksmen that necessarily need to be getting those looks. You're also forcing way too many mid-range shots for guys that aren't great at it. Like, teams you would assume would shoot a lot of mid-range shots. Houston, because you got Durant. Sacramento, because you got DeRozan and just that collection of guys they got in general, where you're going to have, Schroeder, you're going to have Westbrook, you're going to have guys that are going to look for that mid-range jumper. Makes sense. Obviously, OKC, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to take a lot of mid-range shots, and those are the teams you would expect. For Dallas to be taking something like 33, 34% of their shots from the mid-range, you don't have an assassin anywhere in that mix. That's just a curious shot. It screams to me that you're trying to attack the basket and you're not getting home, so you're settling for what you find in the interim. But you're not lethal enough at that for that to be a good shot. So you're just feeding into that 20% in a sense. But when you look at their effective field goal percentage, we're talking like 52%, and that's taking into account 3-point and 2-point shots. Whether it's at the rim, whether it's a three, their effective field goal percentage is 52.5%. So that is bad. That's how you're gonna feed into that points per 100 possessions that we talked about, where it's like a 101 rating has only been done 17 times this year, and you got 6 of them. The next closest team is 2. Cool. Bad shots, too many turnovers, pace, but still among the very fewest field goal attempts per game. And then disjointed, disorganized, not getting the quality looks for the guys that you need to get those looks for. And yeah, your defense is good, but you've also had a lot of injuries. Like, I get it. You've had Anthony Davis miss time. You've had Derek Lively miss time. Obviously, Kyrie's not back yet. Like, you've had your challenges. You should have known these challenges were going to come. In the case of like Kyrie and your point guard insurance policy, that should have been a given. You should have known what was going to be lacking there. And yet, they didn't make proactive moves to give themselves an insurance policy for it. Even if you thought like Nembhard was going to get more reps and opportunities just because of that short depth with the point guard position, that hasn't happened. So even the thing that I saw just based on preseason was like, oh yeah, this kid's probably going to get an opportunity here. Maybe he can carve out a little bit of a role. Oh, nope. We're just going to completely abandon the point guard position right now. Cool. All right. It is what it is. So this team is disjointed. Their offense doesn't seem to make sense. Their planning, you could say their coaching, and their strategizing did not do this team any favors. They've been injured and shorthanded, and now because of that, a team that even I thought bare minimum would be, I thought they'd be a playoff team. I thought they'd be somewhere between 6 through 8. I thought based on tiebreaker scenarios, they could fall anywhere in that range. And yet here we are, and yeah, we're 8 games in. We're not even 10% into the season. I mean, I guess effectively 10%, but to look at where this team is, and just to try and project forward based on the strength of schedule they've had, based on, the cavalry that is or is not coming here very soon, it's hard to see this team as anything other than just another lottery team. And unless Cooper Flagg hits some tremendous growth point somewhere in the season, he'll give you flashes and flickers, great, man. But it's still going to be one of those things for a team that supposedly is trying to win now, where it's not going to happen this year. You're going to be counting on another Kyrie, Anthony Davis tandem that's going to be a year older. At best, people thought the combo of AD and Kyrie, fully healthy, able to sustain that, their elite play, combined with Cooper Flagg's evolution, would make up for everything you needed offensively. The problem is, while Kyrie has not been injury prone as a Maverick, granted, obviously the ACL, people are going to look at that and say like, well, that's the most significant injury of his career, so agree to disagree. You still looked at it and said, like, you're talking about two guys that have been injury prone at times, who have been labeled as made of glass, and you're banking on them in their early to mid 30s to be available for you for the duration of a season or the majority of a season, certainly when it counts and when you are most beat up and worn down. And you're expecting your number 1 overall pick to make a leap to be effectively like a number 2 option bare minimum, but performing like he could be the top scoring option on a given night. It's a lot of things to ask. And for how you're starting it, you can't win a championship in October and November, but you can damn sure lose it. No, 8 games is not enough to look at this and say, like, oh, this team's done, fold the season now. But it is enough for me to look at it and say, yeah, I don't think anything's going to be happening this year. And if they get to the play-in, great. I just don't have a lot of optimism for what this team looks like right now. I think the roster building and composition, the parts worked fine when you had 2 guys that were so otherworldly elite that could create for others, giving them tremendous high-quality looks, generating those wide-open shot attempts for them, and could go ISO and score at an elite level on their own. When you had that, the pieces that you had with like PJ Washington and Najee Marshall and them, that was fine. It made more sense. But as soon as the conversation shifted in the way that it did, it just kind of became a no-win situation. The parts you have don't complement it. You know, I said before, I'm not high on D'Angelo Russell, but he's all they got right now in terms of point guard play. So between that and Klay Thompson just cratering like 26.8% from 3 this year, I don't know what to say or what to do to fix the team. It's just, you broke the one thing that couldn't be broken on the crapshoot that it would get better. And while, yes, it is still atrociously early and you're gonna have the whole rookie contract of Cooper Flagg to try and figure this out and try and get better, the problem is it's not just Cooper's piece of the puzzle. He's a big piece of the puzzle, certainly in the picture of multi-year, but this iteration that's gonna go try and win now is literally built on just the backs of Kyrie and AD. AD's been injured, 3 times in 10 games as a Maverick, dating back to last year? Not even 10 games at this point. 9 games. 9 games. He's had a tweak injury and then came back and was fine. He's overweight. Yeah, he came into the season because of off-season eye surgery or something. He came in out of shape. I don't know how you couldn't have worked around that some other way. But we're seeing issues. He looks slower. He looks less explosive than he did before. It's not a good look. It's not a good combination. And it's a cruel irony, in fact, that the things that were used as to slander Luka Doncic, the weight, the commitment to like his health and nutrition and conditioning, those things were used as arrows to just try and eviscerate his public image and just shame him into say like, no, we're actually not the bad guys because of these reasons. For the piece you get back to be on his 2nd or 3rd injury of some sort, essentially, in 10 games with you, and for him to be overweight and not looking like the player that you traded for, you play dumb games, you win dumb prizes. That's what it boils down to. So the Mavericks, yeah, they're broken right now offensively. Is there time to figure it out? Yeah, and presumably they'll only get better because while it took you all of the preseason plus 8 games this year just to feel like you're starting to figure things out, you're still losing inexcusably bad games to the Pelicans without Zion, and even your wins are against severely depleted teams. So there's not much for me to feel good about with the Mavericks right now. And I know if you're watching the games, that's just how it feels in general. Like, defensively, okay, pretty nice, pretty solid. But guess what? We had teams, even when we had Luka, and even when we had Luka and Brunson, who's also not known as a defender, that were in the top 5 defensively, top 10 certainly defensively, and yet we made the call that we did. It'll never make sense, and I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing about it. I'm not trying to just continue badgering on about it, but it's one of those things. Maybe it's because I took so much time away, and this is the first time that I'm really back and talking about it, that just all this pent up, bottled up frustration that I was just packing down, trying to distance from, is just kind of bubbling out a little bit. The team doesn't deserve to win, frankly. I love a lot of guys on this team, but the team does not deserve to win. Nico Harrison certainly does not deserve to win. And honestly, I wasn't even happy that they got the number 1 pick, because while, yes, a part of me wants to see them be good and relevant, I didn't want to reward Nico. And that's all it felt like it was happening, was even as he goes out there with the audacity to say fortune favors the bold. Bro, miss me with that. Miss me with that utter garbage of a take. But that's all I'm going to talk about here today. Thank you for joining me here. I will have Isaiah with me the next time we're on here next week. This is probably going to be a weekly show here, not just talking NBA. We'll talk some other stuff as well, granted in shorter segments with that. But typically, we're going to do 2 or 3 videos a week, filming a couple times a week, and a full podcast episode will go out weekly. So, thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like the video, drop a comment below, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time, guys, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace.